This is separate shipping per product, version 1.0, configuration, part 1. Log into your admin area. Now click on the modules box on your left. Note the separate shipping box below the modules box. This will be discussed in separate shipping per product, version 1.0, configuration, part 2. Click on the shipping subcategory of the modules box and select separate shipping. Now click on edit. This main configuration will affect the separate shipping box and how the rates will be used. The enable separate shipping setting determines if you will use separate shipping in your shop. Set this to true if you want to use my module. The default table rate or default flat rate settings are to be used with the all setting. We will be looking at the default table rate first. This was based on the table rate shipping module, and the same rules apply. If you are not familiar with the rules, I will go over them for you. We will be using the default entry in the input box to explain how the rules work out and how you can set your shipping rates for all products or categories in the shipping basket, or shopping basket. Sorry. The rules use a colon and comma to separate the rates from the quantity, price, or weight values. The first number determines the quantity, price, or weight amount. After this number, you will notice a colon. This separates the value from the shipping rate. After the colon, you will find the shipping rate. If you have more than one rate, you will use a comma to separate them, and the process repeats itself until the last rate, where you will leave off the comma. So, using the default rates that are set up, it reads up to 25 quantity, price, or weight, charge $8.50 shipping. From there to 50 quantity, price, or weight, charge $5.50 shipping, and up to 10,000 quantity, price, or weight, shipping is free. I suggest for your last rate that you would put a high amount in there so that you can, so if you want every quantity above 100 to use the same rate as the 100 quantity, you would set it to the same rate, or set like 10,000 or some god-awful high number. I'll explain that later. Okay, so the default flat rate setting is to be used with the enable flat rate setting. This should be self-explanatory. If you want any other rate than free shipping, place an amount here. The enable flat rate setting determines if you will use the default flat rate versus the default table rate. Set this to yes if you want to use the default flat rate when setting to all products. Otherwise, set the setting to no to use the default table rate. The setting determines if you are going to use the default rates you just set up, or if you are going to use the rates per category or per product. When setting the setting to all, you will be using the default flat or table rates that you set earlier in this tutorial. When setting this to category, you will be using the rates set up in part 2 of this tutorial. Note, The rates at this time will only work for subcategories and not the main categories. This will be fixed in a future update. I will explain this in greater detail in part 2 of this tutorial series. The last setting will be using the rates per individual products as set up in part 2 of the tutorial series. The method setting determines if you are going to use quantity, price, or weight to determine the table rates. Note, flat rates will still be applied. This setting only affects the table rates. When setting this to quantity and the setting is set to all with use flat rate set to no, the rates are based on the total quantity of products in the cart. When the setting is set to categories, this determines the rate according to the amount of products in an individual subcategory. When the setting is set to products, the rate is determined by the total quantity of the individual products in the shopping basket. This applies to price and weight as well. Note, when set to weight, the weight is divided by your max shipping weight and then multiplied by your rate that you set up in part 2 of the tutorial, and I'll explain this in further detail. The handling setting determines any extra handling charge that you will wish to apply per order received. In a future update to this module, and maybe a separate module on its own, I will be adding a shipping insurance option for your customers, so they can go ahead and select additional insurance for shipping. The tax class setting determines if you wish to apply the shipping rates to a particular tax class. The shipping zone setting applies the rates to a particular zone. This setting is only to be used if you want separate shipping per product to be displayed for a particular shipping zone. So, for example, if you want this module to be used for European countries only, then you will set this to Europe. Note, as part of my wish list and of a future update, I will be including a way to apply separate shipping per separate zones. Therefore, you will have a separate table rates, separate product rates for each zone. Like you have a separate rate for Europe or United States or Australia. And to exclude certain zones from being able to order products from your store with a warning message such as, "We are sorry for the following inconvenience, but we do not ship to your location at this time. Please change your shipping address or try again later." The text of which can be changed at will. Of course, when I update this with that functionality, I'll show you how to change that. The sort order determines where the separate shipping shows up in the Checkout Shipping PHP shipping method box on your main category. I'll show you how that works later, or it's pretty self-explanatory. If it's set to 0 and another shipping method is set to 1, separate shipping will be displayed first. Well, that is it. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Now look forward for part 2 and 3 of this series to familiarize yourself with my module. Part 2 will go into more detail of the separate shipping box that sets the rates, and part 3 will be putting all of it